Okay, the next presentation is a shared presentation between Raphael and myself about update from the DOA side. It's a little bit of what happened in the past and what kind of changes we will all see in the future. And it's structured a little bit like last year. We have some statistics and you will see significant changes in terms of numbers. And also one of the questions that was asked during the Part 21 LOI discussion about significant changes, I will answer a little bit to that. Then some new elements on Brexit. Where are we? What are the contingency measures and what are the implications for design organizations of Brexit when it happens? Changes within the organization, certification within DOA, process changes, a new dashboard, and Raphael will update you on that like he did last year when he introduced the new dashboard. He will give an update on the elements that we then introduced. And then at last, some elements about communication, other activities that we did, the workshops, the trainings, or the JNews, which I think we get quite good feedback from you. So to start with the statistics, as you can see, year after year, we attract a fairly high number of new DOAs, and these are approvals. It's not applications. So we approved already this year 22 new DOAs, and the year is still 1.5 months to go, and we will for sure have some more. And the interest is continuously high. We receive a lot of applications as well. And if you look at the distribution, majority of you have the scope SDC holders, and then we have shared type certificate holders and the other ones for minor changes, minor repairs, and very few for APUs or only repairs. So that's fairly stable partitioning, but as I said, we get a constant increase either because of new entrants and new companies with new technologies. Some companies split or move and take over new responsibilities. So it's a mixture of the reasons why we get so many new organizations. And if you look at how it's distributed in Europe, and this is only taking European DOAs, I left out all the other DOAs that are around the world approved by us. You see that the majority of them, close to 80, is in Germany, followed by UK 72, and that's why Brexit is also such an important topic. And then France with 43, and you see the distribution around Europe and the rest. In total, we have currently 376 DOAs under surveillance that are approved, and the data is actually from last week. And then we have the ADOAs. There, the trend is a bit going down, less interest. For example, last year, for those of you who attended, we started to allow those ADOAs having the scope for ETSO to also cover it eventually under their DOA if they do also STCs or something. So that could also be an argument why we have more DOAs or changes to DOAs and less ADOAs. And you see the majority of them, more than 50%, is for ETS authorizations. And then you have TC, STC, repairs, and a mixture of these. And here, it's nearly the same three countries, first France, then Germany, and then UK. And you see most of them are suppliers for the aircraft OEMs. So we have a really good distribution within Europe of all these organizations. And in total, for the ADOAs, we have a little bit less, 285 approved organizations, which attract a bit less work than the full DOAs. And you will see that in the next slide. How do we deal with all this? In my team at EASA, we have around 26 people doing full-time DOA investigations, whether it's initial checks or surveillance, significant changes. And we are supported by Eve and Christina doing the administrative tasks for all this work. And then we are supported by our colleagues from product certification, so PCMs and experts, because they are involved in DOA activities, rather sampling or doing interviews, supporting audits on a constant basis. And on top of that, we have around 50 colleagues from NAAs working part-time and also PCMs expert. They don't work full-time for DOA, it's only part-time. But the NAA colleagues more and more support us in DOA work and took over either the complete surveillance or supported us in mixed teams, which we established since the last 3 years, I would say. And so far we have performed close to 500 audits this year only. And you can see the year is still not finished. It's quite some work that goes along with this. And we have to see also where are the high risk areas, where do we have to perform more audits, more sampling. And when you look at the distribution of the DOAs, full TC holders for sure get a higher attention than those DOAs that only deal with minor changes. Significant changes to LOI. Somebody asked the question, how many applications did we receive so far? Well, last week it was 47 applications from DOIs amending their design assurance system to address the LOI requirements and the other amendments introduced in Part 21. And it's increasing on a daily basis, but if you do the calculation of which DOAs have to comply with it in the end, it's all STC and TC scope DOAs. It should be 295 when you have to process all that. So we know that a lot of DOAs work already internally in preparing for LOI and the changes, but they didn't send an application yet. And you all heard the deadline for this is 23rd of March next year. And what are the consequences? Please make sure that you prepare yourself and update your processes to meet this target. And also consider, please, the lead time that we need on our side to review things. I mean, we all faced similar situation with the changes triggered by OSD. From our side, it's more important that you address the changes linked to LOI than addressing the changes to the new privilege. If you can desynchronize these things, it would help us and you that we more or less can process all the applications needed. If you come on top of the LOI changes with the new privilege changes, that could delay things. And that's something we all need to be aware of, because if you don't meet the deadline, we will not be able to process new applications for SDCs or major changes because you don't comply with the requirements, which means you have to make an assessment of the level of involvement, etc. And which is not so significant, but still, we will have to raise a level 2 finding because of non-compliance of the design organization with the requirements. Coming to the changes, we had quite some changes within certification, and the keyword here is CT roadmap, which led to some reorganization, which you will see on the next slide. But the trigger for this was more, how can we better prepare for the future? How do we orient ourselves better for strategic activities? Efficiency gains was clearly one point of interest. We have the new technologies and the challenges that we face there. Are we best set up in the old system, or do we have to adapt in order to address all these challenges that you facing us with these, asking for support and advice from us? And all these topics, why we did this, led to the organizational changes and to also some projects that we set up, like competence management or knowledge management. How can we better see what kind of competences do we need in the future? Planning when people retire, how do we transfer their knowledge of the experienced colleagues to newcomers, etc. And we have close cooperation there also with ASD working groups on knowledge management or competence management. And I think there are a number of topics that we really try to address to face the future challenges and to better address your needs. And part of it, some of you might have seen that already. Since 1st of April this year, we have a new structure. You still have a large aircraft, large aeroplane department, but we have split it differently. You have EU and non-EU transport, regional transport, and special aeroplanes. And then general aviation, simply like before, but the jet aeroplanes or the business jets were moved to the GA department. And then you have also the small aeroplanes, the current one, and light manned, unmanned aircraft, balloons, and airships. Former rotorcraft, now called VTOL, you have still the heavy, medium, and light rotorcraft sections, but you have a new section covering with eVTOL and new concepts. This was also to address the challenges coming from all the new entrants and to focus also electrical propulsion and these things in these new domains. And I guess most of you that are involved in this domain will go to the Rotorcraft Symposium beginning of December, where you will see all the details of all the work done in this one. Then propulsion and environmental protection and sustainability were merged. And that is not only taking into account noise and emissions, but also all the rules for supersonic, for aviation fuels and other things, all the aspects of environment and sustainability, a lot of work for the Commission and at ICAO level. And then you have the classical propulsion and power plant sections dealing with the project work. But I think there are some synergies between the colleagues to work together. Then you have the certification strategy and programming department, where you have Michael's group, Michael Gerhardt, with the initial airworthiness specification, so the rulemaking. You have the continued airworthiness and the programming, which is led by Mark Heaft. And then the strategy and then international validation aspects from Gregory. And you will see afterwards, when we come to the international aspects, how we support our colleagues in this work on international validation. And then, last but not least, you have the DOA and ETSO department, where we have two sections dealing purely with DOA matters, and we merged the ETSO section in the department because we thought there were some synergies. All the ADOAs for ETSO, we can clearly have some good cooperation here between the colleagues. Beside that, you have Alain as Innovation and Special Projects Manager, supporting Rachel as Certification Director, and he takes care of the chief experts and the expert structure under certification. And the chief PCMs, where we have three, one for initial airworthiness, continued airworthiness, and for validation aspects, report directly to Julian because they more or less mirror the three sections in Julian's department. So that was just briefly an update on the changes to the certification department, covered mainly under the term roadmap, and which led also to some organizational changes. Then coming to changes related to DOA, affecting you more or less directly. We started to introduce already last year a risk-based approach for auditing. And depending on your performance, how your ISM is working and is rated, and if you have a limited scope in terms of work and criticality, you might see some changes in the oversight that we perform on these organizations. Also, level 3 findings. It was a lot of administrative work in the past. They are still registered during the audits, but we more or less agreed that you follow them up with your independent system monitoring and on a regular basis report back to the team leaders, be it at a progress meeting or an annual meeting. Something that we introduced to make things a bit easier between the colleagues in product certification and in DOA, we identified focal points in all departments that I showed just before, because sometimes it's easier when you want to exchange information to share certain things that you have a central point of contact in these departments who are regularly involved and who share then the information and disseminate it among their colleagues. And one thing we are currently working, and this will quite likely go live next year, we have a planning for improving the initial investigation process. And there we want to rely more on you as the applicant and have you more involved in this process. I know it's sometimes difficult, especially if you are not coming from the aviation environment, and some of the new entrants come from complete different environments in Part 21. It's quite difficult, and we have to do a lot of support or giving advice, but still, we want you to be more involved and more active in the initial investigation process, and not only get things told by us and you just do it because we told you. You have to understand why certain things are needed, and we want you to be more active in this process. Then we had quite some discussions, because 2 years ago we had a presentation on transfer of ownership, or transfer of DOA and change of ownership. And we still see that companies, maybe with good intentions, progress with a change of ownership or a transfer of a DOA without informing us. And this is only to give you an advice. When you have the intention, please inform us as soon as possible, because we can support you, we can give you advice which way to go is the right way, or where you can have eventually some blocking points. And we are currently, because we saw regular cases, discussing with our colleagues whether we need to amend and clarify the guidance material for Part 21 for this. So this is something we see something is really needed to clarify for you, because quite a number of you have gone the wrong way, and the transfer of ownership is not that easy according to Part 21 and the current requirements and AMC material. So let's work together and we can support you there. And with that, I hand over to Raphael for the dashboard.
Thank you very much, Marcus. So, ladies and gentlemen, I'm Raphael Aubert. So I am a junior DOA team leader, and I will present this very nice tool, which is called the DOA dashboard. So thanks to Marcus for giving me this opportunity. So there, you might remember our presentation last year about the DOA dashboard. Well, so today I will start by presenting the background to explain to you why did we change our tool, and then we will really focus on the key evolutions for you to understand what is changing and how we will be delivering the data for the performance. And for having kind of a conclusion, we'll have a look to the perspectives for you to understand what could change from a short to a long-term perspective. Well, before beginning, I would like you to keep in mind the following fact. I will be introducing a single tool that will be supporting both the risk-based oversight and the LOI implementation. To start with, the background. Okay, first, we changed the tool, I must say, because of you, thanks to you. Because we received some comments saying, well, we would like to further understand the way you are assessing our performance, not only at project level, but also from a DOA side. That's why we try to think of new methodologies to do so. Then, as Marcus explained, we want to foster even closer links between product certification and DOI, meaning that we want to have a tool which could be useful both for the PCM experts and the DOA team leaders. And obviously, this is meant to support both the LOI and the risk-based oversight. So LOI, I guess this is quite straightforward for you. You had the presentations this morning, and in particular Rob's one regarding LOI, and so you need performance data in the frame of your LOI proposal to the agency. And for the risk-based oversight, this was already mentioned by Marcus. Basically, it's quite easy for you to understand that we may have a very different oversight cycle from a company which is very well performing and has a low risk exposure from a company that is quite risky in terms of exposure, but has a very poor performance. Now, let's focus on the key evolution from, I would say, theoretical point of view. First, we wanted to enhance data consistency. What is this meaning? First, we simplify the inputs, but all these inputs are now mandatory. And if you add to that the fact that we have fixed weights for the different inputs in our performance indicators, this is meaning that we will get performance indicator that will be actually comparable from one year to another. Why? For us to be able to perform trend analysis over time. The second level has to deal with kind of a standardized assessment. We want to harmonize the way we are assessing performance for your companies. Well, for doing so, we are trying to mimic a bit, to mirror what is done for the technical visas and expert statement of satisfaction, meaning giving the DOA team leader or the DOA team a set of questions for him or her to go through this assessment path. Well, now it's time for a little spoiler. So no worries, it's not about your favorite TV show, but this is about a presentation that will be done at the end of today. In CPIAC, so the tool you know, we will be introducing a further concept, meaning kind of a questionnaire for replacing the quality feedback part of the TVs and SOS. Stay tuned, Andrea will make a presentation later on. And the last level, and I would say the core of the change, has to do with the way we want to achieve a global performance picture of your company. Well, this is meaning that first, we want to highlight safety-related issues, so that when we open the dashboard, we see immediately if something is going wrong. Okay, on top of that, we want to move towards an SMS-like approach, meaning we are more interested into your capability to timely close and correct the identified deficiency than purely counting down the deficiencies. I will get back to that a bit later on. And last but not least, you know LOI, you know these certain major change, certain STC, privilege, and so forth. So we need robust performance data. And for that, we want also the possibility to immediately highlight low performance. Okay, now we covered a bit the theoretical part. I guess it's time for you to see what is actually the dashboard. Moving, very good. Amazing, isn't it? Okay, I mean, for you, this may sound or looks a bit disappointing because this is quite the same than the tool you are used to seeing up to now. Actually, there is one more dot. You see this gray triangle, continuing airworthiness, but this one is not on the chart. Why? Because we are currently building up a system to gather continuing airworthiness feedbacks, like we do for initial airworthiness. So, this is what is happening when everything is going according to the plan. Now, let's suppose that for one reason or for another, I want to say, okay, today I don't want to enter the, say, number of level 2 findings overdue. Then the tool is saying to me, Raphael, thank you very much for your try, but I miss a critical input. So not to mislead you in your analysis, I will not give you any performance indicator. This is to be sure that we have comparable performance indicators over the time. Actually, this is not exactly true. Why? Because it may be the case that during the last year, you did not get any approved STC, major change TC whatsoever. And in that case, you do not get feedback at project level. In that case, we are still depicting the overall performance, but issuing kind of a warning, an information, saying to the PCM and expert for the use in the frame of the LOI, okay, this is the overall performance, but please be aware that this is not encompassing any feedback at initial airworthiness level. Good. I guess you want to understand what is behind the dots. So the dots. First, the blue one, overall DOA performance, this indicator 4.1. Then we have the initial airworthiness performance and the continuing airworthiness performance. These two last items are panel specific, meaning the performance level is depending on the panel you have selected or the panel you are considering. Okay, if you remember correctly, I said we want to harmonize the way we are doing this assessment. So, what did we do? We introduced a kind of a new methodology, a set of questions, and this is simply an excerpt of this question, not all the question, but a set of questions for assessing very specific elements. Okay, first question that we just have to answer. Is this question applicable to my DOA? If yes, then it becomes binary, yes or no. Obviously, the plan is not to convert the DOA team leaders into machine, getting binary replies, but rather to guide us through the assessment, to be sure that we have an harmonized way of assessing different elements of the performance indicators from one DOA team leader to another. I also mentioned that we need initial airworthiness performance. So sorry for Andrea and the spoilers regarding the presentation on CPIAC. But from CPIAC and from the technical visa and expert mental satisfaction, we get data on the project and at panel level. These data are consolidated into this kind of data sheet. And there we are having, a performance overview at panel level for all the projects that have been undertaken during the last year. There, you still not really understand how do we compute this blue dot, the overall DOA performance. Actually, these elements are taken into account to compute the overall performance. It's not a surprise, we are considering the performance on initial airworthiness. The item 2.2, continuing airworthiness, will come. I skip the 2.3 and I go to 2.4, responsiveness to level 2 findings. There, we are assessing how many findings we have that are overdue or extended more than once. This is linked to what I mentioned about the SMS-like approach. We are interested into your capability to timely and effectively close the deficiencies that we have identified. Then we are getting back to the items 2.5 and 2.6, and those are the ISM performance and the DOA team feedback. And for doing so, we are having the methodology I presented through the set of questions. And then I get back to the 2.3. 2.3, level 1 findings. It is not actually per se an indicator. This is more like a flag if you want. In case we have a level 1 finding, basically we are raising this flag and capping the overall DOA performance as low. This is kind of an immediate warning alert information for the PCM and experts when they will have to agree on the proposed LOI. Good. This is the technical side. At the end, you get this kind of representation. So first, you see the blue box at the top. So this is where you have to select the panel you are considering. You can get the overall performance across all panels, but you can also dive deep into the performance at panel level. There, for the purpose of this example, I selected the panel 1. Then you have two different kinds of dots depicted in this chart. The blue diamond, the overall DOA performance, which is the item we just described. So the performance of the entire organization. And then you have this red square, which is the performance on initial airworthiness for the selected panel. In that case, the panel 1. And sorry for that, it's not quite clear on the slide, but you have this strange red dotted line. This, if you want, is kind of an interval of confidence. If you remember my slide with all the feedbacks at panel level, for this specific panel, we had a low number of feedbacks. And then it's normal to say, from a statistical perspective, we are not 100% certain that the actual performance for this panel is, say, medium. So this is just a further information to say, okay, from the data we have, the performance is medium, but this may request further justification in the frame of a proposal. Good. More important than the pure raw data, the comment fields. At the bottom of the slide, you have a huge comment field, which is at the organizational level. And on the left-hand side, you have something which is specific to the panel. Bottom line, when you are opening the dashboard, when our experts, PCM, DOA team leaders are opening the dashboard, at a glimpse, they are capable of seeing all the necessary information for a specific DOA. So all is, I may say, summarized in this kind of data sheet. This was all regarding the current tool. Now, very quickly, let's have a look to the different perspectives. First, sorry, Andrea, again, but we will roll out this quality feedback in CEPIAC. Andrea will get back to this specific element. On top of that, as I mentioned, for now, it's fair to say that we are lacking a very comprehensive tool for gathering this continuing awareness data. This will come, and then you will get this continuing awareness data that will be appearing in the dashboard. Something a bit more tricky and also a bit more controversial. Blending of certain DOA performance elements into the panel-specific performance. Well, there are some explanations. You may argue that your performance on the structure field is only due to the quality of your panel 3 team of specialists. But in the end, the airworthiness of the final product is the result of the overall performance of the organization. So this might be interesting to think of integrating part of the DOA performance into this panel-specific performance, which is to be used in the frame of the LOI. And last but not least, you understood that we want to migrate towards a full risk-based approach to be consistent also with SMS. And basically, we are thinking of revamping the tool to make it fully in line with this approach and make it maybe more user-friendly and put it in an online platform and so on and so forth. But this, please aware that this is more like a long-term perspective. I guess I'm done for the dashboard. I stay there for the questions afterwards, and then I hand over back to Marcus. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Raphael. Don't get lost behind the curtain. Yeah, just coming back on to finish off the presentation on DOA activities. What else happened and is ongoing to happen? As mentioned and announced last year, we do involve NAA colleagues more and more in DOA work. This year in summer, we had a specific training course to train newcomers from different NAAs from Czech Republic, Poland, Germany, Switzerland, and Austria, because they will be more involved and take over some of the DOAs in their countries. And we are quite happy that they support us so much in this, because you have seen the number is constantly growing. The resources on our side remain stable. We try to improve the way we work and to streamline things, but still we need the support from the NAA colleagues. And this additional new colleagues who will be trained further and will start working in the coming months, that's really helpful. Also, what we announced last year, the team leader managers started to join, like last year, what they did with the EASA team leaders. Now they joined NAA team leaders when they perform audits in order to see how do they apply our procedures, because they have to work according to our procedures. Are there good practices that we can learn from? It's a matter of standardization and quality check, you could say. And the feedback that we receive from the NAA colleagues, but as well as from the team leader managers, is really positive, because the NAAs get feedback on they understood correctly how things were meant from our side and learn also some things from the team leader managers and vice versa. So it's I think, a very good work for both sides. Then we had 2 workshops this year with NAA colleagues. to exchange views on topics that we have seen, whether it is LOI coming up or transfer of ownership, to discuss things, to share experiences, guidance, best practice. And I must say we had really very good attendance from all the NAAs that support us in DOA work, and they actively participated to the discussions, and it was really a great exercise, these two workshops with the colleagues. And we will continue that on a regular basis next year. Then we provided several training courses, and you can also register for that via our website, either to EASA or NAA staff, but also to industry or to foreign authorities like the authority from Hong Kong. We qualified 2 new colleagues, Dirk Rappe and Mariano Landi, to also become trainers. And now we have 4 trainers beside Dirk Richard and Ian Higgins. And for next year, we can offer up to 6 courses on DOA. And it's quite useful, especially for the new entrants that I mentioned that are not familiar that much with the Part 21 and the EASA system. Maybe it's useful for you to attend one of these courses because you see the background, how things are connected, and how you could benefit from these to set up your DOA properly. The JNews, we published already 2 editions, sometimes related to topics that you, the industry, raised and asked us to address. There's 1 edition to come in December. I think, Raphael, it's nearly finished. We just need to do the fine-tuning, and then it should be online in December. And we plan then for next year again 3 editions and collecting also feedback from you on the topics. And the feedback we received so far was quite positive, that the things are useful for you. But if you are seeing that things make things maybe unclear or don't explain what you expect, then please let us know as well. Because then we can adjust and correct things, because this is something that we want to do to support you and to provide you with additional guideline. And yeah, then under the roadmap, I mentioned that already, we have a project called DOA Team Leader PCM Expert Collaboration or Synergies, especially in the low-end area. Why couldn't a PCM not be acting as a DOA team leader for a small company doing, for example, TCs for balloons? And how can we better exchange information that we gather at DOA level, and some of the elements Raphael just mentioned, and share it with PCMs and experts when they face projects from you as an organization, where to look at. And sharing this information and the experience working closer together is really something where we see benefits for both sides. We as DOA get feedback from the colleagues from their projects, and they can get some update from our side to improve the investigation and the work that they're carrying out. And this is one of the projects under the CT roadmap that we have currently launched. And that's, in a nutshell, the update from the DOA. I know there are already a number of questions, so let's see. The first one, STC and JNews and STC newsletter. I thought that some of the elements on our website you can subscribe to. I'm not familiar whether for JNews and STC letter that's possible, but that's something that we can check for sure with our colleagues from the publication service.
Marcus, sorry, just to add something. This is currently being worked on, and this is something that should come in our extranet, so the EASA website, next year. In the meantime, for those who are really interested, we maintain a list to contact points to which we send the JNews each time we edit a new JNews. So please feel free to contact you assigned DOA team leader or myself, we will add you to the list to be sure in the meantime you receive all updates.
Okay, thanks for that. Sharing of DOA performance with the DOA, what is the policy? How often do we share this information? We have established a system with a memorandum of understanding that needs to be signed by you, the DOA, and by us to make use of the data in the right way. And when you sign that, you will have access to the raw data assessing, for example, the projects. The DOA team leaders can share with you certain elements of the dashboard information, for example, and your performance. And I think it would be good if you always discuss things with the DOA team leader and not start to interpret things yourself into the dashboard numbers, because you need some information that we try to gather and collect, whether it's the annual report or in the dashboard itself. And so we share it, but you don't get the dashboard as such and assess your own performance. And the frequency, how often we share it. For smaller organizations that have one project a year, 2 projects a year, we do it normally on an annual basis. We have other organizations with plenty of approvals, major changes. They get it on a quarterly basis. So there we can adjust to the needs of you as an organization. Expected EASA lead time for the review of LOI procedures after application. Well, there I would like to ask my colleagues who dealt with these cases so far, do you have any average numbers that you could give, how long it takes to do the LOI? I think it depends really on the maturity and the quality of your procedures that you provide and whether you have questions back and forth. But I don't know. Rob or any of the other colleagues, do you have a rough estimate? I know there are some colleagues from my team here in the room. Ah, there it comes.
The difficulty was the microphone.
Okay.
I found one. It's really difficult to say, of course. What you said is true. If your LOI procedures are good, are fulfilling the requirements, you've looked at the AMC material, the guidance material, all the other material were published, then it can be a rather quick process. You have to realize, of course, that you're probably not the only one applying for LOI with the DOA team leader. So the DOA team leader needs to manage it until the 23rd of March. But yeah, it really is dependent on the quality of what you submit to the DOA team leader. I'm not going to say an amount in days, weeks, or months, sorry.
But at least we have issued already some significant changes to design organizations to address this. And 48 last week we had applications, but quick question to you, just a hands up. Who of you thinks he has a pretty mature draft internally in the company, didn't apply yet with a significant change, but is able to submit things and have something that is can be shared and can be assessed by the team leader by the end of this year? Just hands up, please. Not too many. Maybe 20%. But still, okay. There's one question where I don't know exactly what SME stands for. Since the other SMEs are evaluating the performance of the design organization, which influences the LOI, would it not be fair if the DOA provide feedback on the SMEs? What do you mean with SME? Oh, subject matter expert. Ah, okay. Yes, and I'm pretty sure that, Gilles, correct me if I'm wrong, industry thought about assessing EASA like we assess you, yes, but there is no such system yet available. Might come, yes, why not? If the DOA team leader agreed with the LOI procedure, is a further check of another EASA person required? Well, as you know, we have the system that the 4I principle, you have the DOA team leader and the team leader manager who verifies in the end the decision, and that still applies. But that we can streamline and process it fairly quickly. So I don't see it's too difficult. DOA department staff, do you intend to use the qualified entity option more? Well, qualified entity in terms of NAAs, yes. In terms of other organizations, as we talk a lot about very sensitive subjects, I don't think this will materialize in the coming years. But this is something, I think it was discussed in the past, and we clearly came to the conclusion, no, with the NAAs, yes, it's a different system, but using other industry organizations to do an assessment is something I'm not really seeing to happen. LOI cover ETSO, we answered that already in the previous session on LOI. It's slightly different, but yes, LOI also applies for ETSO. What else do we have? When and how will the publication of initial investigation on DOA available? Sorry, I'm not quite sure that I understand that question. Christian, can you explain that maybe? Okay. So how are we going to change the initial investigation process and what we expect? Yes, this will be, once we agreed it internally, also shared with industry. Yes. I would guess next year, but it will take some time. How many data are needed to issue the first DOA dashboard? In this task, under responsibility of DOA team leader. Well, as you have seen from the dashboard as provided by Raphael, if you have very few projects, the uncertainty bar is very high. So you really don't know where you are. And therefore, you have to be very careful using this data. You need a number of projects in order, and also disciplines, for example, whether it's structures, avionics, flight, in order to be able to get some kind of, are there patterns? Was this a one-off project that went wrong? So we will gather that information over time, and to start with, we have to be quite cautious with just one or two projects. Nevertheless, the team leader feedback on the DOA aspects, ISM performance, etc., they are valid across the board. But the project feedback is something where we have to see how that we don't take too much from one or two projects, but get a good statistical overview. And one more. The third one on sharing DOA performance, I answered already. The first one, Alain, which talks about increased similarity between EASA and EU military authorities. Will there be a bilateral agreement to enable parts to move between systems? That's maybe in your role as a strategic advisor.
Thank you, Marcus. That was the bilateral I was interested in, not the previous one, but that one I can bring some light onto the discussion here. So to keep it simple, the military system and the civil system are using very different regulations on the oversight system. So today, since we are time limited, a bilateral is not an option. Having said that, we are having a lot of discussions with them. We have a kind of military strategy on how to approach the whole domain, and we have signed with a number of military authorities and their oversight bodies working arrangement or memorandum of understanding or cooperation, aiming at facilitating our mutual understanding and facilitating our respective safety regulators' obligations. It doesn't answer the question on exchanging spare parts. And here it is a bit more complicated. If you want to exchange spare parts, that means at the end of the day, the parts moving from the civil to the military and from the military to the civil have to be followed into a very integrated, not to say single, regulatory and oversight system. For us, Form 1, etc., you know very well how it works. So with the new basic regulation, there is an option which was a bit more difficult before with the so-called opt-in. And that's what we should explore together. All partners and industry as a key role as TC holder or STC holder in the end to apply or to encourage the national governments to apply for this opt-in to implement one implementing rule. For us, it is Part 21. And Part 21 complete, not a small part of it, not only the design aspect or the production aspect or whatsoever. If we want to benefit from a regulation, we have to adopt the complete regulation. And that's what we are discussing with many bodies around Europe in terms on how to anticipate, foresee, plan, is the first opt-in for an implementing rule, and for us, Part 21. That's the easiest, not to say the cleanest, but the easiest way to facilitate exchange of parts between systems. If not, and you know very well probably, the military are trying to implement the so-called EMAR. It's a bit like what we had before with the GAS, the JARS. The problem of JARS were national variants, and we took years to get rid of all national variants. EMAR, it's a bit the same. So when you say I have EMAR 21, for instance, it's a pure theoretical case. And my own German, French, Belgian, whatsoever, is EMAR 21 plus or minus a few things, it's the end of the game in terms of standardization. And for us, it is hard law, so we must, you know very well, find compliance against the Part 21. So that's the short reply. Opt-in is the easiest, cleanest way to have exchange of spare parts. On a national basis, government and authority, military could decide to implement our rules on the pure national basis. It is like opt-in, but without losing the prerogative of the oversight authority, but implementing our set of regulations. I hope it is clear enough. It's complex from a legal standpoint, but very simple. If you want to exchange spare parts, you have to be into the same or compatible oversight systems.